If you're looking for a place to hang out, figure out where you can take the next step in your dairy farming business, then you're in the right spot. Welcome to the High Performance Herd podcast. Here we will inform you what you can do today to future-proof your business for tomorrow. A big thanks to our sponsors Flight-Fonterra, Idexx, Koru Diagnostics, TasHerd, Tasmanian Dairy Trust, Zoetis, NHIA, Datamars. I'm your host, Andrew Savage. Enjoy this episode of the High Performance Herd podcast wherever you may be listening. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, and jump on our Facebook group, the High Performance Herd Project. Today in the High Performance Herd studio, I have Sam Flight. Sam is the people and paddock specialist for Fonterra here in Tasmania, and she completed her honours at the University of Tasmania in Milk Urea Nitrogen. Hi, Sam. Welcome to the High Performance Herd podcast, and tell us something about yourself many people don't know about you.
Oh, this is always a tough question, Andrew. But I guess most people don't know that I actually had an all expenses paid study tour to Turkey, Belgium, and France as part of an essay writing competition called the Frank McDonald Memorial Prize when I think I was in about grade 10 and got to attend the Gallipoli Dawn service, which was one of the most special and moving experiences I've ever had. So yeah, that's something fun and interesting.
Oh, that's awesome. It'd be on a lot of Kiwis and Aussies bucket list to attend an ANCAC ceremony on the beaches here at Gallipoli. So that would have been really special, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
At TasHerd, where I work as a field officer, we've had a lot of increased demand and talk around milk urea nitrogen, and we're getting a lot of calls to provide testing for it. Like, what is milk urea nitrogen?
Yeah, great question. So MUN, or milk urea nitrogen, as we call it, it is a product of dietary breakdown of protein in the rumen. And so this is mainly your rumen degradable, but also your non-protein nitrogen. So ammonia is a byproduct of this breakdown by the rumen bugs. And it is this ammonia that is actually diffused across the rumen wall and absorbed into the bloodstream. So ammonia is then taken via the bloodstream to the liver for detoxification into urea and is excreted in the likes of saliva, urine, and your milk, hence the term milk urea nitrogen. A lot of work has been done, I guess, in looking at and understanding the process in dairy nutrition, but in essence, it is the milk urea nitrogen that can be used as an indicator of excess dietary protein. And that's really the crux of the research that I undertook.
Sounds a lot. You keep it at a high level, I guess, because there'll be a lot of words that you use that I don't understand. How are you seeing farmers use milk urea nitrogen to make on-farm decisions?
Yeah, look, currently across Tasmania and Australia, in a pasture-based system, MUN is not being well utilised, and really up until now, the value of MUN in a pasture-based system has not been well understood. And so, we can look to other countries that are using milk urea nitrogen or milk urea as a tool in their toolkit. But yeah, as far as what we've seen in this neck of the woods, there hasn't been a lot of use on farm. So really, from my research into MUN, I am able to show the correlation between milk urea nitrogen and excess protein in the diet of a dairy cow. And it is a very strong correlation, and this can be used as a measure of herd protein levels to improve on-farm management. So yeah, it's I know New Zealand have been looking at it, and they do get their results off the tankers over there, but again, it's something that they're still trying to understand fully and implement on farm.
That's right. So it's, I guess, in some ways a work in progress, although the research has proven it's really around how do we practically use this information.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there has been kind of ongoing conversations around it only being useful in a TMR type system. And yeah, that's not true. And the research that I was involved in, Andrew, it shows that, and it shows that it can be used as a pasture management tool or a tool to understand better where you sit in terms of milk urea nitrogen and excess protein in the diet.
Well, it's really exciting that we can, I guess, like you say, add another tool to the farmer's tool belt. When farmers are considering this test or the results, or how do they go about the level? Like, is there an optimum level that they should aim for when they get their result back? Or is it kind of unique to each farm?
Yeah, so it is unique to the system and what they are feeding and the diet of their cow. So you can appreciate that not everyone farms the same way, Andrew, and everyone's system looks a little bit different. But the research that I looked at in my literature review and understanding, I guess, the rest of the globe and where milk urea levels or milk urea nitrogen levels sit, really show that there are some thresholds for overshooting or undershooting and overshooting protein in the diet. So below 10, this is where I set my research parameter and, analysis on milk urea nitrogen was below 10 milligrams per deciliter, which is known to have production impacts, and above 20 milligrams per deciliter, which is known to have energy production costs as well as economical and sustainability implications. So it's these indicative thresholds that indicate overshooting as a true excess in protein. So really, I think that range is probably a lot narrower, but by setting them out to those levels, you can really appreciate that it is indicating that true excess. And so that anything above that, we should be thinking, what are we doing on farm, and what levers do we have on farm to pull to have an impact on pulling that back?
Yeah, great. That's really something quite powerful to have that information. I get a few questions around milk urea nitrogen and milk urea. What is the difference between MUN and just milk urea? And I understand there is a way to convert that.
Absolutely. Yep. So it's milk urea nitrogen is really the nitrogen weight out of a urea molecule. So milk urea is the value that the near infrared spectrometry machine or analysis, that's what that machine actually tests for, is milk urea. And from the US, they report on milk urea nitrogen, but using the calibration and the wet chemistry analysis, which is a fixed conversion, you can then obviously convert to your milk urea nitrogen. So yeah, when I got my TasHerd herd test data, it was reported on in milk urea nitrogen. So that's what I used in my research. But really the key measurement is the milk urea. And it really just depends, I guess, as an industry, which one is used. But to go from MUN to milk urea is MUN times 2.1438 or something, I think. And then you can divide MUN by 0.46 to convert it the other way. But I guess in general, research papers talk to milk urea nitrogen as the US do this. But I think if it is to be used, we should probably look at milk urea and be consistent across regions and across countries even, as that is what it is measured at from the machine level. So MUN is a relative value, not an absolute value, but that is what I used in this research. So I'm not sure whether that covers that question, Andrew, but
oh no, that's great. It's basically the same test, and there is a way to convert it, and potentially the likes of TasHerd or any herd recording center can actually potentially report that any way they like, just using that formula.
Yes, that's right. But I mean, the key measurement machines measuring is your milk urea. So I think really we should stick with that measurement and that reading, talking to milk urea. But yeah, you can definitely convert it. And, I talked to milk urea nitrogen in the research, as that was what was presented in the herd test recording.
Yeah, that's great. And maybe something we need to look at our end is, because I know even in recent weeks, it's caused a little bit of confusion with a couple of clients as to which is which. And they got a bit of a fright when they saw their results, because I think they were expecting a certain threshold and it was well outside that. So it's really cool that we can collaborate, I suppose, and keep things simple for farmers.
Absolutely. And that's really what we've got to think about in terms of this, is the user and on farm. And so, yeah, to me, that was what the research that I did was all about, is how do we then implement this on farm, and what do we look at going forward from an extension perspective, to make this easily available and easily understandable for our farmers.
And your take on farmers using this result, potentially they would then engage with a nutritionalist or their vet around what this result is and how they should act with that?
Yeah, look, I think that's right. I think you should, well, I think the key to it is really understanding what it means, and understanding these thresholds. But then, as an industry, I think we need to provide some extension resources around these levels, and what are those levers that we can be pulling on farm to achieve, the desired outcome. And yeah, from there, if you've got further questions, obviously, your nutritionist and your veterinary support are always great resources to tap into.
That's great advice. There's a really common thread coming out of the High Performance Herd project, and that is the power of data. It's great to have data, but you probably then need to spend some more energy, resource, money, perhaps, having and engaging someone to help you with that data to really get the benefit from these sort of tests, which is really cool. And when you're thinking about using this test, what sort of one key takeaway or piece of advice that you would have if a farmer here is thinking, maybe I should be looking at MUN or MU? Do we just call it MU if it doesn't have the head on the end? What would be one piece of advice that you would give for farmers when considering using this tool?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So I think really just being able to understand that MUN responds fairly quickly in milk. So what you measure reflects the last major meal that they have had or have been grazing. So it may be best looked at as several daily measurements, as protein fluctuation between paddocks varies quite a bit. So this will give an average based on a bulk milk analysis. So yeah, maybe it is a 3-day average that we look at rather than a daily. But I just think keeping that in mind, that the measurement is actually reflecting, the last grazing or the last feed that they've actually consumed.
So what you're saying in essence is it would be really good to enter a medium-term testing regime to create averages across a period of time, as opposed to just doing this, one-off at a herd test or as a snapshot every now and again.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was really my recommendation, was to be having daily or very frequent results. And, we can do it daily, like we're getting picked up, from milk factories daily. So, having that from an industry perspective would be beneficial, because that's when we can start to get, start to make use of this information.
That's cool. I want to thank you heaps for coming and talking to us. It's given the listeners, I'm sure, something else to think about, another, like you say, tool in the tool belt that is going to ensure a sustainable future for farmers.
Yeah, I think it's exciting, and I think, when we talk to the challenges that are in surplus on dairy farms and in our dairy systems, is that we need to look to the tools that we have available to us and start utilizing them to try and combat some of these challenges. But one thing I did want to mention that we probably didn't cover off on, Andrew, yet, is just, I talk to, management on farm, and, this is useful on farm, and you're probably thinking, well, what are the levers on farm to achieve the desired benefits? And so I just wanted to quickly touch on some of the things I talked about in my research around using MUN and a bulk milk representation, and how it can help guide on-farm decision-making. So things like, changing your fertilizer regimes, your pasture rotation, your leaf stage allocation, as well as things like your additional supplementation into the diet. So really just understanding how these things change that excess protein level and being able to manage accordingly. And then I think key to that is that extension work around some of the options and how you can navigate.
That sounds great. And I guess, again, it's around that consistency, isn't it? So that you can see correlations and trends between those practical on-farm measures that you've just talked about.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's exciting. It's exciting stuff.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's an exciting time for all farmers, definitely. So thanks very much for coming in and sharing that with us. And we might have a little bit more on milk urea down the track, I think, just to because I think it's going to be something that's going to keep popping up.
Awesome. Sounds great, Andrew. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Cool. Thanks, Sam. Really appreciate it. Thanks very much. Thanks for listening to the High Performance Herd podcast. Thanks to the sponsors, Fonterra, Idexx, Koru Diagnostics, TasHerd, the Tasmanian Dairy Trust, Zoetis, NHIA, Datamars. Feel free to subscribe and review the podcast. Share it with your friends. The more, the merrier. Jump on Facebook, search the High Performance Herd Project, and you're very welcome to join the High Performance Herd private Facebook group. If you want to see a video of this podcast, jump on YouTube or www.highperformanceherd.com, where you'll see a link to these sponsors for more information on the High Performance Herd Project, which is a real-life dairy farm, spring block calving right here in Tassie. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next week.